Do they have a distillery too, or am I thinking of something else?
No, they do not have a distillery.
I'm thinking of something else. Okay.
They usually have puppies, though.
There are a lot of puppies there.
That's what I always get puppies and hard liquor mixed up.
Oh, God.
Cool.
Well, on that note, everybody ready?
Sure.
Here we go.
Go for it.
The only thing we have to
Beer.
is
Beer.
itself.
Beer. So many choices.
Normally no function beer well without.
Woohoo! Beer!
Hello and welcome to another episode of Beer Busters. We'll bring you the news and reviews of your favorite brews. I am Dan Baker, joined by my co-host and brewologist,
Steph Hefner.
and of course the demented and fermented
Wayne Baker.
Oh man, oh man, oh man.
Oh, man,
A
oh, man.
Zoom coming, here we are. I don't know what the hell I was trying to say there. But hey, it's another it's another episode. We're still in we're not in the before times anymore. We're not necessarily in the after times anymore. So we're still doing
We're in the
Zoom
hybrid
thing.
times.
We're doing the hybrid times. The New York Times?
Which, if last episode is any indication, is
No,
something we are
never
not
again.
good at.
Never.
It needs to
Again.
be either
Good
fully,
God.
fully in person or fully on Zoom. When we try to mix the two, it takes us an hour to get the podcast
If
working.
there's one thing we've learned, it's you don't cross the streams.
Yeah, so our apologies to everyone who joined us our last episode of Poor Man's for having to wait so goddamn long for us to actually start the show after we got there.
But as a big apology, Dan got that episode edited and posted a week early so that we could proudly promote the event that is coming up
Yes.
Can't
in
promote that
real
event.
time this coming Thursday, and podcast time it already happened.
Yeah.
Sorry, but you should have listened to the last episode.
Can't do an episode promoting an event that comes out after the event. So yeah, that hey, it all worked out. Anyway, I'm sure you've looked at your phone or device that you're listening to this on, and you can see that we have someone joining us from Cartel Brewing, and that would be
Adam Chamberland.
Woo! Adam, thank you for joining us, man.
Woo. Yeah, man. So I am Adam Chamberlain. I live in Lancaster, Pennsylvania as of December 2005. I am a transplant from Connecticut, so my New England background here.
So you're a Whalers fan.
Oh, long live the Whalers. I still have a hat. I could probably sell it for a lot on eBay.
Probably.
Yeah, apparently those hats are very desirable.
Yeah. It's probably buried in the bowels of my parents' basement
Fair
still,
enough.
but I know it's there.
Yeah. What? Rich has what? 2 Whalers hats?
Oh, he has many Whalers hats.
Oh,
I
there's
think
more.
there's
Okay.
a new one that's coming in the mail.
He can
Oh,
open.
that's right. He wanted
He
the
can
old,
open up his own Whalers hat
Colorado one.
shop. Oh jeez. Oh man. Oh man.
Rich likes to wear hats of defunct teams.
Does he have an Oilers
Yeah.
hat? No, it wasn't Oilers. Who? Oh God, what was the?
The Whalers are not defunct.
No. It was
Nordiques, Expos,
Expos.
the Colorado. Apparently, the Colorado Rockies was the original hockey team before they became the Avalanche.
Weird.
Wait, wasn't the Rockies a baseball team?
It is
They
now
are,
the baseball
yeah.
team in Denver. Yes,
I remember.
but the Whalers is like his favorite of the defunct teams.
So the Marlins and the Rockies, not people who listen to the show know I'm not a sports person, but I played Little League. And I remember when the Rockies and the Marlins became teams. I don't know how that actually happened.
We were in 5th grade when the Florida Marlins became a team because that was the first time I ever flew to Florida. That's how I remember that.
And it was definitely like the early 90s because I thought the teal was super cool.
Oh yeah, teal was like the color of the '90s.
That was
yeah.
the color. Anyway, we've totally derailed Adam's introduction here.
in true
No,
form.
that's wonderful. I love New England sports. I mean, come on. Who doesn't love the Patriots, right?
Well, that brings us to the end of another episode.
Oh boy, that
Although
was
I'm
great.
going to tell you right now, and this is blasphemy from where I come from, but I really enjoyed seeing the Eagles take them down to get their Super Bowl championship a while back. So that was
Put Brady in his
I had
place.
it
And
off.
he put Brady in his place, and then he left the Patriots, and then he was gonna leave the Buccaneers, and somebody paid $500,000 for his last game used football, and then he was like, "Hey, just kidding, I'm playing again next season."
I just
Wasn't that
remember the
brilliant?
parade.
That's, yeah.
He wants to go out on top. He wants to go out with another ring, which I don't blame him. There's no arguing about it. He's one of the best players to ever grace the sport. He's got to go out with a victory.
Well, it's funny because I think I saw some meme and it was like talking about how I forget her name, but it was like, if it weren't for like the Mannings, Peyton and Eli's mom, he would have 10 rings or something like that, or 11 rings or something.
That's a good point.
It was kind of funny. It was mildly amusing. Anyways, I founded Cartel Brewing and Blending back in, technically we put our little LLC together November of 2019. And it was kind of a several years coming, several years and several potential partnership groups since I decided that I actually wanted to take this insane plunge. And it's been great. I wouldn't change a thing. We're having a blast. It's going really well.
Well, that's always good to hear.
Good. Glad to hear. Before we forget, we have to get some of the housekeeping out of the way. You listen to this, you know the drill. Follow along on the interwebs. We are at Beerbusters, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Facebook, we're Beerbusters Podcast.
I forget about TikTok.
Oh, man. How could you forget about the TikTok? There's beerbusterspodcast.com/shop. There is youtube.com, where we are also Beerbusters Podcast. I mean, also, you're probably not going to youtube.com. You're probably looking at it on an app, let's be honest. And there's Patreon, where we are Beerbusters.
Check out all the things.
All of the things. And now that is out of the way.
Check out all the things. So 2019 November was when you said you were founded or made the LLC. At what point did you actually open the doors?
We opened March 11th of 2021.
Got it.
So we signed the lease here on March 1st of 2020. And 2 weeks later, everybody knows what happened 2 weeks later in the middle of March. That was wonderful. But honestly, I mean, it took us almost a year to build this place out and kind of navigate all of the things, townships and architects and, you know, all of that good stuff to get to where we were able to open. We were hoping for late 2020. And then, you know, it was kind of back and forth with like, are we shut down? Are we not shut down? We're open. Oh, no, we're not open. And I'm like, you know, hey, let's just suck it up and like pay rent for a few more months, take our time, dial in the beers. And we were able to open with nine fresh beers on tap. All of them, for the most part, got phenomenal feedback and reviews. We didn't feel like we had to rush the beer, you know, which is, I mean, you spend all this time up front kind of building everything out and you're not really rushing. Why rush the most important reason with your opening? So we were kind of able to figure all that out, and very glad that we did. So although I would have loved a late fall, early winter anniversary, because I'm a big stout, barrel-aged stout, dark beer, barley wine kind of person. So I'm always going to be dropping those types of beers.
So you've got Dan's attention now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've learned a lot about that style over the years from some very, very reputable people who have taught me so much. And so I look forward to getting to the point where that can be like, we can have enough space to turn many, many, many barrels.
If you end up getting like stacks of barrels, just promise us you never get rid of the barrels, like some other brewers that we know.
Keep the barrels.
Always keep the barrels. Always keep the barrels. Do not get rid of the barrels.
What do you want to do with the barrels?
Yeah,
use them.
Tell me.
No, like aged beer in them.
No, Dan is making a reference.
But you can only use them for so many times.
Well, then you replace them and you just get other barrels where the other barrels used to.
Right, but then.
Are you trying to put a dig on Ethan because he doesn't do barrel aging anymore? Is that where this is going?
This was all a very convoluted way of digging at Ethan for that time.
I thought maybe you wanted new furniture and wanted him to give you it for a table or
something.
No,
although that would be kind of cool. I need a new end table. Thank you for that idea. I actually really like that.
There you go.
Do you have a barrel to spare?
There's a lot of things you can do with barrels once they're retired.
Yeah, that's true. Well, whenever you're ready to retire any barrels you may have, let me know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, the cool thing is, I mean, if you're using spirit barrels, even when you're done using them for that purpose, I mean, there's always the reusability of throwing a beer in them with some wild yeast for a couple of years. And now you've got, you know, once you pull all of the bourbon or rye or whatever spirit you're trying to get out of it, you could turn it into a funky barrel.
Yeah. Funky barrels are the best barrels.
We do like funky barrels.
So I guess we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, which is okay. It's kind of par for the course here on our podcast. And we can rewind, but you are mentioning, we're talking about barrel aging right off the bat. And part of your name is brewing and blending. So yes, I'm curious about what the blending part of that name means, and perhaps what that currently looks like at Cartel, and maybe what your future plans are for the blending part of that.
Sure. So, ironically, I mean, obviously blending is a barrel term. You're taking barrels, you're blending them together, you're tasting them, making sure they're acceptable, blending them, finishing the product. And ironically, the only thing we don't really do right now that involves blending is with barrels. It's everything else. So we actually, some of it's semi-new, some of it's something everybody already does. I mean, we always say we blend multiple ways. We blend in the fermenter, we blend in the keg, and we blend at the taps. So blending in the tank is pretty common, like adding flavors in secondary, adding juice, fruits, purees, all sorts of different ingredients to the beer. So that's pretty common to do in the fermentation vessel. We haven't really used puree or anything yet. We've only used fresh pressed fruits that we get through our friends at Rejuice, two of which are partners of mine, the guys that founded that company.
And just a short shout out to Rejuice. They're not really, I was going to say they're not sponsoring this episode, but since they are kind of part of this, anyway,
honestly,
I freaking love their juice. And I'm holding it up because right now I am drinking the Red Rose, which is red beet, apple, carrot, ginger, and pineapple. And whenever I'm in the Lancaster market, I pick up a bunch of this. And I recently found out that my local Giant carries it too, just a mile down the road. So I'm very, very excited about that. So anyone that loves juice as much as I do, it is a really freaking good product. So I was excited to see that they're part of your team.
That's a great little commercial there. And they've been around for 5-6 years, maybe 7. They're still growing. They just landed Giant recently. They landed probably about a year ago. They landed all the PA and New Jersey Whole Foods. Their production is pretty decent size, but they can always keep growing, which is nice. As long as they don't grow to the point of where they can't keep supplying me with delicious fresh pressed fruits. Anyway, so back to the blending. So we blend in the kegs. So a lot of what we do involves blending in the kegs. That's probably what we do the most of is, I might make a full large batch of our cream ale mug club. That used to be in the home brewing days, a cream ale that I brewed and infused or blended with fresh Amish root beer from a local farmer's market here in Lancaster. And it was very refreshing. It wasn't a root beer bomb necessarily. It was just kind of like a nice crispy cream ale with just a hint of like a root beer float. We blend that beer also with fresh pressed strawberry from our pals at Rejuice, with vanilla bean to make more of a strawberries and cream type of cream ale. We took our English mild public and blended it in the keg with Earl Grey tea and vanilla.
And that beer is the friggin' bomb.
That sounds
that
really
shit
good.
is amazing. Just saying.
That's a beer. It's funny that I've been wanting to brew for years and I never did as a home brewer. I always had this recipe in the back of my head and I've seen other people do it. And I'm like, man, I got to finally actually buckle down and do it. And Public, which is our English mild, one of our top sellers, which I'm so stoked about. Last summer, we were open for a few months and I just started thinking of this beer by Brew Gentleman. I think it was like postcards and envelopes or something like that. It's like their English mild that like the Bull's Head will have on cask, or like I'll occasionally find myself finding that beer somewhere. And I was just like, I just want to drink an English mild. I want to drink something that is kind of like a refreshing iced tea with a hint of lemon, only it's beer. So I just developed a recipe, brewed it, the hops through lemon character, and the rest is history. And it's kind of funny because several local brewers were kind of like, English mild, good luck selling that style. It's really tricky. And I was like, well, I like drinking it. It's all in how you describe it. And I mean, it's one of our most popular beers. I have to keep making it. I think I'm on like batch 6 or 7 right now. Local bars love it. Anyway, so finally decided, well, we're making an English mild anyway, so I might as well just finally do this London Fog Earl Grey vanilla beer that I've always wanted to do, and it's turned out great. And now we have people like, when's that coming back? And so it'll just be a regular keg blend infusion every time I make public, which we make very regularly. So it should be popping up almost on the regular.
Very cool. Now, is that public with a K on the end, like old school, old Englishy public?
Yes.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That sounds really good. I love English styles. I love milds, and I also love Earl Grey and the London Fog concept. That sounds really good. Not surprised that it's popular.
Now, did you talk about how you are blending at the tap as well?
Sure. So I like to design beers that also complement each other when blended together at the tap. So we actually, to give you some examples, when we made the root beer cream ale, we would actually blend that with our milk stout, and it would actually taste more like a mug root beer with the lactose and the kind of frothiness of it, the dark complexities of the malts that we use for that milk stout. Any customers will come up with blends. I mean, that's the fun part too. Like, we had a 12% barley wine on tap, and not everybody wants to sip on that. So, we blended that with Public, or we blended that with the cream ale. So now you have like a 7 or 8% strong ale that still has those complex caramelized flavors, but muted ABV. We've taken like extra tart sour base Berliner Weiss or Goza, blended it with an IPA, and now you've got like a slightly tart IPA, all at the taps. There's a whole bunch of other ones I'm sure I'm completely forgetting about, but the cool thing is that you have so many taps, but way more choices or possibilities. So the customers have a lot of fun. Like, I wonder what these two taste like. And I'm always willing to just be like, well, let's try it before you commit to it. Let's just pull a 5 ounce, 50-50. Sometimes we blend 2/3, 1/3, or, we go 3/4 of one beer and just 1/4 of the other. We have a couple customers that are new to craft beer, and all they would drink is Yingling lager. And so what we did was we took our Pilsner 3/4 of the way up the pint glass and topped it off with Public. And so it had the same color as your classic Yingling lager. It almost had the same flavor profile, and we call it Rich Man's Yingling.
Rich Man's Yingling. I like that. I like that.
So was this desire to do all of these different types of blending and mixing all of these flavors in beer? Does this stem back from the creativity that you had as a home brewer?
Some, yeah. I actually, and part of the concept that we really haven't executed yet was like, I used to take like single hop IP, like for example, like I might design a recipe around a single hop, just to really get an idea of what that hop tastes like. And then I would brew 2 batches of the same base malt recipe with 2 completely different hops. So now you could try a single hop Citra and a single hop Mosaic. You can also blend those 2 50-50, and now you get an idea of what a Citra and Mosaic combination tastes like. That's a pretty popular combination, but there's so many different things you can do with hops. So eventually we might do a similar thing where we'd have 2 different single hop IPAs on tap, and people could drink them as they are, untouched. Or, hey, you want to do this 50-50, maybe eventually we have a third. So now you can do like a 3 hop, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 type of a blend. We had the idea to, maybe we make a base stout recipe. I also come from the coffee world to an extent. So I was putting coffee and beer
before it was cool.
back in 2008, when there really, at that time, believe it or not, there really wasn't many breweries doing coffee and beer. There were a few for sure, but like it's nowhere near what it's become. So, but the issue with coffee and beer is the freshness factor. So, you know, I don't know if you've heard, you know, you sit a beer for a couple months or a few months and you get kind of that green pepper coffee kind of, you know, you almost can't escape it because coffee doesn't age very well. So we were talking about, well, what if we could pull fresh espresso on the regular and you could literally just throw a shot in a glass and top it off with a stout. I found a better way to do that though. The way I do coffee is a lot different than probably how most, if not all, breweries that I know of are doing it.
Tell us your secrets.
We actually, what's that?
So tell us your secrets.
I mean, it's not, I share it with people. Like I eventually it's going to, but I use actually high quality freeze dried coffee. So, so we actually let the beer rehydrate the coffee. So you're not diluting your beer with liquid. You're not steeping, you know, beans or ground beans or anything like that. You're actually taking a coffee that was properly brewed and then immediately freeze dried. And that freshness will be preserved for up to 25 years. And then you're actually reintroducing that coffee to moisture, liquid. You're letting the beer rehydrate the coffee so it becomes scientifically bound to those, you know, to the actual chemistry of the liquid that is the beer. So
I didn't know it would stay good for 25 years. That's insane.
Well, I mean, most freeze-dried products do. Like if you see freeze-dried food and like all those kind of MRE, like the meals ready to eat type of stuff, like anything that's freeze-dried, they say has a shelf life for up to 25 years. A good friend of mine who I used to homebrew with, and he used to work for Passenger Coffee. He founded a company that was pretty much the innovator in high quality freeze dried coffee. And he's in Lancaster, but he's known throughout the world. He literally has a waiting list with some of the top roasters in the world, just waiting for him to be able to do business with them. Really, really cool stuff. We actually took a beer and freeze dried it one time and rehydrated it. Yeah, it was really fun. It was totally an experiment.
Wait, hold on a second. So when you freeze dry coffee, you're actually freeze drying the liquid coffee.
The brewed coffee.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. I figured it would have just been the beans. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking too. And then when you said you freeze dried beer, I'm like, wait, my brain was understanding this incorrectly.
It's like deep fried Coke. How do you deep fry a liquid?
Yeah, so he actually would make a rather large batch of pour over coffee. You've had pour over coffee?
Yeah.
So he was actually using beer fermenters, like large conical fermenters with special filtration systems to do pour over coffee, and then he would immediately freeze dry it. So you're basically sucking all the moisture out of it and turning it into a powder that you then rehydrate.
Which is like,
and you can do this with beer too.
Oh, we did it. I mean, this was years ago. I'd love to play with it some more, because the funny thing about the beer was we took an IPA and we freeze dried it. And then we actually rehydrated it with plain seltzer water. Now, you know how seltzer water pours out and it's like fizzy and like hissing and like just like a normal soda, right? Funny thing about this was when we poured the seltzer over the beer, it created a perfectly formed head. Like creamy head. It wasn't fizzy. It was like frothy head, like a normal beer.
Right. Yeah.
Now, we didn't test it or take it to a lab to see what the alcohol content was, but by taste alone, it tasted like the alcohol to some degree was preserved.
Oh, that was going to be my next question. That's interesting.
You don't
I would
know,
be interested to see the comparison of the alcohol content before and then after rehydrating it.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a tangent based on.
It's one of those things that like you just take it like freeze dried. Yeah, I know how that works. Like I know what that is. But then when you really think about it, you're like, wait, do I really understand what this is and how it works? And like, that's so cool. I want to like witness this happening. When you freeze dry beer next time, please invite us.
I would love to find a way to do that again. He has been, man, this was back in like 2016 that we did this. And he's been blowing up ever since, and he's scaled his business several times and still can't keep up. Like, I hardly see the guy. Like, I saw him recently for 10 minutes and it was very exciting.
So hold on.
But yeah.
When you buy like instant coffee,
That's what I was going to say.
Is that like freeze-dried coffee?
No. So like your Folgers crystals and stuff, like it's not quite the same thing. It's similar, but it's not quite the same. There are several companies doing what he does now since then. So there's definitely a higher level of quality within the instant coffee world. You just have to look for freeze-dried coffee.
So it's like a better quality version of, but it's essentially like bougie instant coffee.
Oh yeah, and it's not cheap. Like most roasters that you go to, like you'll see that they have instant coffee. He probably produces it for them. Like if you go to Passenger and you purchase their instant coffee, he's produced it for them, co-labeled. So like they don't make it; they send him their coffee. He processes it and then has it packaged, and then they sell it.
But just think about the possibilities of like taking this, like a whole line of freeze-dried beers.
Oh yeah, I mean,
like imagine like traveling, like I want to share this beer with you, trying to smuggle like glass bottles into your luggage, or like I don't want to mention all the other ways.
It doesn't even amount to that much. We're talking like to get a whole glass of something, you might need like 4 to 6 grams.
Wow.
And that's why
this is amazing.
It's perfect for like the freeze-dried coffee was popular for like airplanes too, like because people didn't want to take them on there. Another thing I did see a number of years ago was I think it was in Japan. They had found a way to freeze dry and preserve the alcohol of like vodkas and stuff like that. Like, I don't know if that ever turned into anything or if it was a joke or like, it seemed like it was legit, but you never know.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything come to market since then, but
that's interesting. I bet you though, even if you were able to perfect the process of freeze drying beer, preserve the alcohol, preserve the quality and integrity of the product through to rehydration, if it became a thing, I guarantee you there would still always be people who were like, it's not as good. It's not the same. It's not
Hold
real
on.
beer.
We're all preferring to drink beers in cans now. Do you remember what a cliche
that's what I'm saying.
used to be?
Yeah. I just feel like there would be like the instant coffee thing. Like when you talk about freeze-dried coffee, I think a lot of people, their touchstone is that the Folgers crystals. And so like the immediate association is lower quality. And so
I mean, he had his biggest, I think one of the tipping points with, or kind of a stepping stone with the business, with the freeze-dried coffee business was, and I don't know the guy's name, but he was like a world-renowned coffee expert or whatever who tweeted about it. And it was something like, couldn't tell in a blind taste test between the rehydrated freeze-dried coffee or a fresh pour-over coffee. Right. And it was like, I don't know. I'm not going to get into quoting things.
You have a good point. You just need the right influencer. You need the right person to say the right thing at the right time, and people's minds can change.
The power of social media.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, back to beer.
Back to beer.
Sorry.
Seriously. Yeah. You guys edit this, right?
Oh, yeah, it's totally edited. But we go on tangents all the time.
We don't need to start. Somebody's going to listen to it and be like, oh, I got to start figuring out how to freeze dry beer now.
Yeah. Probably will.
But it's really interesting.
It is an interesting
to start
concept.
The conversation.
Yeah.
Who knows? You could be the part of this revolution, this like new direction in the beer world.
As long as the quality doesn't suffer, I'm for it.
Yeah, that's the tricky bit.
Yeah.
But speaking of getting back to beer, you mentioned your homebrew days, so I just wanted to back up a little bit and talk a little bit about your homebrewing experience and your beer experience leading up to opening Cartel.
Sure. So back in 2007, I believe, a friend of mine had gotten into homebrewing and kind of invited me to come hang out with him and try to make beer. And I wasn't really involved too much. I just kind of watched, kind of learned. And, it was January or February 2008 is when I kind of put together a recipe that I wanted to make, and we were going to make it together. And it was essentially a Mad Elf clone recipe, all grain, I subbed the cherries for fresh plums.
Oh,
So it was plums and honey.
okay.
That was a crazy good time. We learned a lot. It was the first time either of us had done it with like all grain and not extracts and stuff. Just kind of hooked on the process. So eventually, got some equipment to toy around with. Back in the day, there really wasn't much available other than your traditional coolers and, turkey fryer burners and like your little stainless kettle. And now it's never been a better time to start home brewing with the amount of technology and equipment that's available. But eventually kind of connected with, I was introduced to another person who became a really good friend for a time. Ended up buying all of his equipment because he was kind of giving up the hobby, and he was pretty serious about it, and invited me over. This was a different friend. So I ended up buying his equipment, and then I planned my first brew day with this equipment I just purchased from him. And I give him a call. I'm like, hey, you want to come over and brew? And he's like, yeah. So like he gave up the hobby and sold his equipment, but then he ended up brewing with me every time that I brewed.
It's way better when you do it at someone else's house.
Gonna say that's the better way, because then all the equipment stays at your place.
And the mess.
And the mess.
Mm-hmm. So we had a lot of fun. Started making. I always liked making like crazy big beers, like strong beers, like barley wines, experimental stuff, coffee. I did a barley wine that I called a Belgian barley wine with fresh house-made duck sauce.
Oh, I did read about that. Yes, that sounded really intriguing.
It was very interesting. It actually was kind of good. I wouldn't mind making it again if I can get that much quantity of duck sauce. But anyway,
was it all in the little packets? Did you have to open like a million little packets and put it?
No. This was like, so across the street from where I lived was this little egg roll shop, like legit hand rolled egg roll shop, and they made their own duck sauce that they sold in like a mason jar.
Oh, nice.
And it was legit. Had some spice to it. Like, it was really good. We may have ordered that for lunch and had a few beers, and I decided to dump it into the boil when nobody was looking, and that's how that one kind of started. But anyway, so and then we started brewing we actually were brewing at Passenger when they were closed at their roastery with my friend, making big stouts, and he would actually pull fresh espresso shots to get like 40 ounces of fresh espresso from their fancy espresso maker to dump into this beer. I remember sharing it with some people. I used to, travel around to go to beer releases and trade beer. And like, we used to go to Tired Hands and wait in line for, Paraguja and like all these different beers that they would release. And I remember bringing this beer. It was like a 14 or 15% espresso stout that I thought came out really nice. And I was sharing it with people in the parking lot, which you're not supposed to do. And one of the guys who tried it was like, oh, you should enter this in the Lidditz homebrew competition. I'm part of that festival. And I had never entered a competition ever up to that point. Made a lot of beer, but never thought about entering anything. So I actually ended up entering it the last day of the deadline, which was the next day. So I'm like hustling to get bottles of this thing together. And ended up getting into the final 10, and then it ended up winning. So the first competition went really well. And then so ever since then, me and my buddies started talking about opening a brewery, and we kind of planned and purchased better equipment and kind of honed in on some of these recipes. Ultimately, he just decided he didn't want to do that like as a career. So I ended up kind of buying him out of all the equipment and stuff that we invested in. We had even raised, a little bit of money from just the general public who loved the beer and wanted to support us. So then I was on my own for a little while. When I was brewing at Passenger, making coffee beers and stuff, Rejuice was actually sharing space there because they were kind of getting their start. So that's where I met Cullen, who was one of the founders of Rejuice. And we made like they pressed us some papaya juice, and we did like this really awesome papaya IPA. And like we started playing around with juice infusions and beer, letting it ferment out, playing with fruits, all sorts of stuff. And then several years later, we kind of kept in touch, and several years and several conversations later, we ended up putting a partnership together with Cullen and Kyle, who both founded Rejuice. And along the way, we got to know Sam and Cindy, who own Cilantro Asian Street Kitchen in Lancaster. And he had always wanted to get into brewing. He had been doing some home brewing. And so, and from the restaurant standpoint, and just other business owners, other experienced people that are skilled in ways that I'm not, that can kind of balance me out. So it's a really good team, and things are going really well. So after a bunch of conversations, we kind of put everything together, made it official late 2019. So that's kind of the rushed version of the story. There's all sorts of highs and lows and speed bumps and all sorts of things, but yeah, we're stoked.
Well, somewhere in there was a duck sauce beer and an award-winning espresso beer, so it sounds like a good story to me.
I'm surprised do you guys serve coffee at the brewery?
We don't. I mean, we've talked about that, and I think it'd be really cool. And at some point, we've talked about kind of dual purposing the space for, like, when we have the staff, maybe opening up on the mornings and making it kind of like a coffee shop during the day, and then a beer cafe by night. I love
that idea.
I always have some Swift Cup on hand, so occasionally if a customer asks for coffee, I will whip him up some. It's my friend's freeze-dried coffee, so it's pretty good. Everybody that's tried it has been like, "This is amazing. What is this?" So, I told him, "Hey, keep dropping off some product. I'll keep converting more people to as customers."
Yeah,
the only bad thing about these breweries that also open up as coffee shops is that in the morning when they're open for coffee, and then you're disappointed when you realize it's too early for beer. But or the opposite. We went to, last time we were in Pittsburgh, we went to Trace Brewing, had some great beer, but it was the end of the night and I could really have used a nice espresso or even just a good black coffee. And the cafe it was too late. They were closed. So we got to find a way to like have enough staffing so that you can have the beer and the coffee from open to close, no matter what.
Well, I think the key is this freeze-dried coffee. I'm going to look into this because like waiting for coffee to brew, especially like in the morning when you're getting ready for work, is so annoying. But I hate instant coffee. Every instant coffee I've tried, I haven't liked. So to get a good quality, essentially what is instant coffee, even it's a different product, but it works the same way. Sounds great. And I think that's the key for having it available at all hours at the brewery without having to have add extra staff and equipment and stuff, is you just serve that. You just add water and it's that
and
easy.
It wouldn't take much space or equipment.
I love
or
how we're
time or staff.
We're so obsessed with the freeze drying.
You literally just need a hot water on demand and some freeze. So, and that's kind of funny because the folks over at Little Amps Coffee in Harrisburg came and hung out with us for a little while. Just talking beer and coffee and all sorts of stuff. And they actually used my friend to process their coffee and freeze dried. So when we had our anniversary, we did a single keg of our cream ale on the Columbia Cerda Huida blend that the Little Amps does. And it was freeze dried by my friend. So they provided us with the appropriate amount of coffee. That worked out really nice. I love cream ale for really good, high quality coffees because cream ale is like this blank canvas of just crispy, nice beer. And the coffee can actually, in the right proportions, coffee can be the main event. Like you can kind of taste without disrupting the flavors of the beer. You can infuse all of the intricacies and complexities of a really high quality coffee. So if you're trying to get like, caramel or lemon or, all the different coffee, what you're trying to get out of a nice pour over coffee that you drink, almost at room temp or a little bit hotter, you can pull those flavors and they're not competing with roasted malts like with a stout or a porter. Now, I love coffee and stouts and porters, don't get me wrong, but if you're really trying to taste different coffee blends, different coffee, single origin, multiple styles of coffee, cream ales are really good base for that.
Yeah, I feel like it's a lot of people who aren't big coffee drinkers maybe don't realize that like lighter roasts and like single origin coffees like that do have flavor characteristics that you might not expect in coffee. They tend to be a little more fruity, a little more lighter, brighter flavors, and so they do mesh well with like a cream ale. Was it a coffee Kolsch we had at St. Benjamin? Yep. Remember when our minds were blown? This was many years ago.
Yes, and I actually saw a can of that last night.
What is it called?
Junto.
That's what it's called.
Junto. I don't remember exactly.
That was our...
The Kolsch would be a great, another
awesome.
Great beer for coffee.
Yeah, it was really, really, really good.
And that was definitely the first time and I think all of us, we were marveling at it at the time, having a coffee beer that was not a dark beer. It wasn't a stout. It wasn't a porter. It wasn't, any of those kind of things. So yeah, it's really cool.
I can feel your passion when you talk about coffee and these stouts and these dark beers like that. I really hope that that's something that continues to be a focus at Cartel, because I'm excited to drink these coffees and drink these beers just even through your excitement and your knowledge of it. And I really think that adding a cafe component and always having at least a few coffee inspired or coffee blended beers on the tap list, like I feel like that just has to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think having some conversations with the folks that started and run Passenger, like we might be able to start doing more of that with the cream ale. And actually, we're starting to explore tea infusion too, because there's so many different things that you can do with tea without disturbing the beer. Like they're always accent flavors, but because so many things in the industry now are extremes. Like, not that I don't like pastry stouts, but like just over the top sugar, just to the point of where like you lose the beer, and that's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, I would like things to be a little bit more balanced where you could still taste the beer, but you could still taste the flavor that's involved. Like we did cream ale. We did the cream ale recipe on Thai iced tea. I don't know if anybody's had a Thai iced tea, but like it has that, it came out like that orange Thai iced tea color that you kind of get, whenever you go to like a Thai place and they're making iced tea. Really nice flavors. So I think there's a lot that can be done with tea as well. And I've seen breweries doing that. So it's really cool over the years. It's been explored, but it hasn't even been explored it hasn't scratched the surface.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more coffee infused beers out there. We've come across a few tea infused beers, and I think it would be cool to see some more out there.
So have you done any I know you've only been open just over a year, but have you done any barrel aging, or do you have any barrel projects that are ready for human consumption in the near future?
Yeah, so I only have about 6 barrels filled right now. I'm getting ready to probably fill 1 or 2 more. We actually emptied our first barrel right before our anniversary. So I was actually surprised that it was ready. I do a lot of longer aging, so typically 18 to 24 months. I know, some, might say that's ridiculous, but I just think that the beers that I brew to put in a barrel are designed to sit in that barrel for that amount of time. So we actually had a barrel that we got from our friends at Stolen Wolf in Lidditz, and the barrel was what's called an alligator barrel. So the inside of the barrel is like ridged, so you get twice the surface area. So you actually get almost 2 years worth of aging in only 1 year. So I had sampled that barrel probably January, February, and expecting to be like, okay, we got probably another 6 months. And it was ready. So we actually released that in bottles the weekend of our anniversary in March. And we released about 200 bottles, and those were gone in less than a week. Obviously, I still have some stashed away. But so when I made that beer, I actually filled 2 barrels. I filled the bourbon barrel and I filled the rye barrel. And the rye barrel is about ready, so I'll probably be emptying that soon. So I've been doing those as single barrels, so we don't blend them. It's a single barrel. So everything that's in that barrel is what it is. Like you taste the barrel, that's what the beer is going to be. We haven't really blended multiple barrels together. I like the idea of single barrel. I mean, I think to an extent we'll always do that. I mean, someday we might blend barrels, but there are going to be certain barrels that taste really special, and I don't want to like change anything about it. I want that to be the beer that gets released.
Now that I would think comes with a certain amount of risk. I mean, I like the idea of a single barrel as well. I like same as like a single hop. It's really cool to see like what one thing brings, but you do run the risk where like if something is really off or not where you want it to be, you don't have that option of like blending it down with other things. Do you think that carries more of a risk in that regard?
No, if a barrel wasn't up to a snuff, I wouldn't dream of blending it with another barrel to I would just get rid of that barrel.
Okay.
That would go down the drain. So it's either going to be acceptable or
not,
exceptional, or it's going to be a tax write-off.
Fair. Very good answer. Fair.
Yeah.
So I wanted to circle back to something we talked about before we actually started recording. Is you brewed a collaboration beer today, and you have a number of other collaborations in the very near future. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we've had conversations and been reached out to by a number of breweries since we've opened. I'm pretty much running a lot of what's going on here, by myself at the moment. I had some amazing people helping me in the early days, assistant brewing, and now they're getting ready to start a cider business, which is kind of cool. So it just didn't work out, and the weeks felt like days, and stayed in touch with these folks, and now it's starting to kind of come together all at once. Like it just kind of happened all at once. Anyways, so we did one with Shaler today. That's going to be a lot of fun. We're doing a peanut butter and jelly IPA.
Interesting.
So,
not. I didn't think that sentence was going to end with IPA. If I'm honest,
I don't know that I approve of this.
I'd be interested.
But
to
if
try
it's
it,
Shaler, I don't think Shaler. They brew crazy shit.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of it too. It's just like he tried. I did a chocolate peanut butter imperial stout, like a test keg blend, and he could not stop talking about how it was the best way to do peanut butter. Like he's like, I've had tons of peanut butter beers, and whatever you're doing, it's the best way, and we have to do peanut butter.
Dan does love peanut butter beers, so I feel like he needs to be the ultimate judge of this.
Yeah. Hey,
So-
I'll be the taste tester.
It's gonna be a single IPA, obviously on the hazier side, on the slightly sweeter side, blackberry and peanut butter, some Nelson hops. I like Nelson because it throws a little bit of grapey kind of characteristics. It's not the best season to get like fresh grape juice, so we're just gonna go with like a blackberry peanut butter. We'll see what happens.
No, that would, I feel like that'll work out really well. And maybe this is not the best analogy in my brain, but I did have a blackberry jam and peanut butter sandwich at one point. It was really good. Like it's a flavor you don't really think of that would go very well with it, but it worked. I'd be excited to see what happens with the beer. I'm sure it's going to be delicious.
The IPA style is that's the wild card. We don't know how. And honestly, we have a 5-barrel system. It's not a huge batch. We're splitting the batch. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
So it will be on tap at both locations.
Yes.
By both locations, I mean at Cartel and at Shaler.
And Shaler,
Yes.
yeah.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
When do you expect the beer to be on tap? IPA, I wouldn't expect it would take too long.
No, it's the fruiting and all that stuff that takes a little bit of time. I would say 2 to 3 weeks.
So probably right around when this episode comes out, it'll be available.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a little later. Honestly, we were tasting this today, and it tasted amazing. And I'm just like, hey guys, are we cool with like if this thing tastes like a banger? Like, could we just skip the fruit? And we were like, oh yeah, we could just make that decision later. But then we decided like, no, we're just going to see this through. This was the idea. This is what we're going to do. And we're just going to see it through because we could always make that base recipe any other time.
Yeah, you could come back to it.
So another collab that I've been kind of working on for about 5 or 6 months now, with Mark over at Lancaster Brewing Company. So I had this old recipe that I used to homebrew, and it was basically my take on Russian River's Pliny the Elder, and just a big West Coast, almost Pilsner colored IPA. It's kind of, crispy, all the things you want. I'm sure you guys have experienced the joys of Pliny. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, I called it Respect Your Elders. And I thought, well, we're the new guys in town. Like, it'd be really cool to do this as a collab with like one of the OGs, like Lancaster, Springhouse, some of these breweries that have been around before. All 21 or 22 more of us showed up. So ultimately, it worked out to do this at Lancaster Brewing Company, and we're going to probably do a pretty large batch of that. We're going to be bringing that a week from today. And we reached out to Russian River just to kind of, we went back and forth, like, we should reach out to them, or should we do it? Or do you think they're going to be okay with it? Because the label I designed looks just like Pliny the Elder's label. And we reached out and got an email back from Vinny, the brewer founder, like the guy. Like, mm-hmm. I love, it's one of my favorite breweries. So we were so stoked. He was like totally cool with it. Thought it was awesome. Like, we're probably going to send him some bottles or whatever. And maybe we'll get a shout out or some kind of a that's a tag or a nod. But
so in this case, it worked out asking for permission and not forgiveness.
Yep. So, and it's turned into this like series we might do, kind of like, we might pick another classic, a classic beer that everybody, that's been around forever, whether it's, High Lie IPA or, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale or something like that, and like put it as like part of the Respect Your Elders series, and we do it. We've been talking about it. It kind of turned into like a discussion with like a ton of different ideas where it could go. But we'll start with this one and see how it goes. We'll probably put some of it in cans, some of it on draft at both locations, and then I'll probably do a limited number of I actually have several pallets of bottles that are the same bottle that Pliny originally came in, those 500 milliliter, like Maine Brewing Company looking, like, yeah. So I'll probably do a limited run of those just for the nostalgia of it. It'd be fun.
I love the idea of the series. I think that's cool. And I like that some of these older styles people are craving again. I love the breweries are making West Coast style IPAs again. And you mentioned the mild earlier. I'm okay with this.
Yeah, no, we'll see where it goes. We'll let the customer, I always have the philosophy of just like, let the customer kind of tell you what they want. Like
within reason,
sure, but I
don't want a tap list of hazy IPAs.
No, I'm a picky person too, but like, I'd rather, for the most part, within reason, I'd rather ask what people want than tell them what they should want.
Yeah. Well, and I think considering going back to the blending at the tap thing, I think that shows that sort of mentality of just like letting people experiment and finding out what your customers are into rather than dictating necessarily. Because when I first read about that on the website, I was like, that sounds risky. And I know I said the same thing about the barrels, but like just letting people mix their, your beers together however they want. That's not always necessarily like there might be two beers that don't go well together. But allowing the customers to experiment and just sort of using that as like a sounding board. I think it just shows a confidence in like, I'm just going to let people drink.
It's not something that happens constantly and is like reckless. There's parameters to it. And most of the time they're asking us like, hey, based on what you have on tap right now, what do you think would be a good, couple to blend together? So it's still more heavily leaning on like our recommendation, but we do have occasional people that will say, hey, I want to do these two together. And we're sure, go for it.
Why not?
Yeah. So, I mean, there still will be times where I'm okay with brewing something and telling people, hey, this is, you should like this in so many words.
Yeah.
But, that's not like the primary thing.
You're going to let the customer tell you what they want to drink, but then politely suggest new things for them to try.
Mm-hmm. I think that there's a beer for everybody. In this day and age,
Yeah, now.
I don't think it's I mean, it's possible. There's a fraction of a percent out there that will just not like any beer ever. But I'm like, anytime someone's like, I don't like beer, or it's more like it's an opportunity to educate and really say, okay, would you do me a favor and try this? You're not forcing them to do anything. And most of the time we introduce people to something that they didn't think was, it's like, oh, well, I didn't realize beer could be like this. Mm-hmm. And it's not always a crazy recipe or a Kool-Aid beer or a London Fog. Sometimes it's just an English mild, because all they've experienced is just macro brew, old school or extra hoppy, or like, who knows where they're coming from. And it's amazing because so many years later, we're still at that place where I'll get somebody in here that's like, I've never thought about coffee and beer before.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm like, yeah, well, we didn't invent it, it's popular, it's a thing. But it's interesting. There's still people out there that this is their first experience with some of this stuff, which is really cool.
Yeah, we've been having conversations on this podcast for almost 10 years now about, introducing people into beer and people's preconceptions about like what beer can be. And it is kind of interesting, like, to look back even now when craft beer has exploded and it's just everywhere, and you do still get those people who are like, what tastes like Bud Light, or, I didn't know, I thought dark beers were all gross, and, these sort of misconceptions that people have. And I guess there will always be people to educate.
I mean, I can be kind of a sarcastic, semi-salty person at times, and like people, I think
you have to be a brewer.
Yeah. People that know my personality, like, they don't take it the wrong way. But like, I think being able to interact with people, like, they can kind of get an idea that I have a sense of humor, and I joke around, and I'm not, trying to be offensive, but I'm going to say stuff that's kind of funny, but could be perceived as otherwise. And so the constant back and forth, because I love stouts. I brew mostly stouts and barley wines, dark beers. So I drink them all year long, but there's this whole stigma of like, it's too hot out, it's summertime, I'm not going to drink a stout. And so I've developed this answer, and I'm still working on it, and it really works every time, even with people that I just met, because they can detect the humor in it and they're not taking it offensively. But people will just be like, oh, that's a brown ale, or that's a stout. Like, oh, it's too warm out, well, I'll wait till it's colder. And I'll always answer like, yeah, I really hate iced tea in the summertime. It's too dark. It's like some variation of that statement. And it always catches people off guard, and they're just like, all right, good point, I'll try the English mild. And then they end up having 5 or 6 of them over the course of 3 hours. It's just like, or whatever, they'll have like a handful of them. And it's just like, when you actually think of something for what it is, it's like, yeah, I mean, I get where people are coming from, like, for these thick milk stouts that, could be over the top. It doesn't bother me to drink them all the year round, but I get it. Some people just don't like that. But yeah, so it's really interesting, those conversations.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for drinking seasonally, but not like strictly. Like, it's fun to do, things in certain times of year just out of tradition, or like,
Oh yeah, totally.
But like, if you want to drink a barley wine in July, like, go ahead. Like, why the hell not? Like, if that's what you want to drink it,
Well, there's the other thing too. It's like, oh, it's too hot out to drink a barley wine, and I'm like, yeah, I know, the air conditioning in here is not quite low enough for that. It's like we keep it 70 degrees year round in here, so it's like whether it's winter. But again, I joke. I get where people are coming from. You're not going to slam a barley wine on a hot summer day,
right? But if you want to,
but you can definitely slam a 4.2% English mild. It's kind of I call it my golf course beer.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
the Arnold Palmer, Yeah.
Arnold Palmer.
I feel
That's
like
funny.
it's time for a game.
Sure. I'm happy to play a fun game.
Boo.
I'm ready for some fun and
Fun and excitement.
Fun and excitement. Cheers, Internet, and welcome to Happy Fun Time Games, the podcast trivia segment that still thinks teal is cool. That was too hard to say. I should have picked something else, but here we are. What are you going to do? Today,
my first car was teal.
There you go. Teal's a cool color, in moderation, like barley wines. Today, our guest Adam from Cartel Brewing joins my co-hosts Dan and Steph in a game of lies and deceit as we play Libation or Fabrication. So if you don't know, this is a game in which I'm going to give you the name of something, and you have to tell me whether that thing is a real beer or just something I or someone else made up, because as attempted once before with mixed success, the fake beer names today come from random utterances of podcast episodes past. Now, you may think that this would give my fellow hosts an unfair advantage since they were present when all of these things were said, but you would be wrong, because as history has taught us, our podcast memories, like an Ewok, are short and fuzzy.
Wow.
We will begin the game, as we often do, to my left, with Dan for our first name of the game. Tell me, is this a real beer or is it fake? It is called Drowning in Tomatoes.
Ooh, I hope it's fake. Oh, I hope it's fake.
Dan, not a fan of tomatoes, saying he hopes
It's
that
true.
is
I'm not.
fake. Steph, what do you think?
Say it one more time.
Drowning in Tomatoes.
It's like my worst nightmare.
What a way to go.
Why?
Right.
Fake.
All right, Steph, after much deliberation, says fake. And finally, Adam, real or fake?
So I know there was a brewery that did a spaghetti and meatballs or spaghetti type of beer with tomatoes. I don't know if this is the beer or not, but I'm going to say it's real.
Oh, bucking the trend, saying it is real. Not a good strategy, because it is, in fact, fake. Yes. You were wrong. Sorry. First one up. Answer wrong. This not a beer comes from episode 225, in which we were joined by Dan's drunken Renaissance Fair friend
Oh, yeah.
and brewer at Devil's Eye Brewing. Dan will be thankful, as we have learned, that the tomatoes are indeed fictional. Drowning in Tomatoes, not a real beer. Moving on to our next beer of the game. Is it real? Is it fake? Steph, you're going to guess first. This one is called Split Happens. Is that a real beer, or is it a non sequitur from a previous podcast episode? Or both. None of them are both.
Oh, that would be
I'll
awesome.
tell you this time.
I don't know. I feel like I kind of remember someone accidentally saying that on the show. I'm going to say fake.
All right, saying that is fake. Adam?
This game scares me.
I'm going to stick with the real.
Sticking with real. All right, so far Steph and Adam have both stuck with the same answer for the first two questions. Dan, what are you going to say?
I'm going to say real.
Oh, Dan mixing it up this time around. Good strategy, because this one is real. Ooh. Yes, it is a real beer. Adam and Dan were correct. Split Happens is a banana split pastry stout from Fitger's Brewhouse in Duluth, Minnesota. To get the real banana taste, they started off with what they describe as a split load of chocolate malt, roasted malts, and bananas straight into the mash, as well as a, quote, banana boatload of lactose.
See, now I wish it was fake.
Yeah, it's real, and there's lots of puns. It is also conditioned on a bunch more bananas, that one's mine, plus vanilla beans, roasted peanuts, and a dash of cherry on top. Split Happens.
Are they freeze-dried bananas?
I don't know. That is a good question. We probably will never find the
I can't
answer.
imagine putting actual bananas into a fermenter. That just sounds like a mess.
I feel like
I
people
never-
have done crazier things.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
I never
very true.
understood how that worked with the banana.
There's
It's too good.
there's lots of bananas in that beer. But
I feel like
freeze-dried
there's
or
a
not.
joke here that we're missing.
I know. I feel like there is too. That's why I'm like, there's got to be something funny to say. But we're gonna move on.
That shit is bananas.
That shit is bananas. Bananas. Adam, you are up to guess first on what is quickly we have come to our penultimate beer of the game. This is a short game this evening because it's a Tuesday. Our next beer is called Finger Pistols. Real or fake?
Feeder or fooder?
Finger Pistols.
Finger pistols.
What you said makes more sense. I mean, in relation to beer.
I want to go fake.
Going fake on that one. Dan, what do you think?
I mean, that could go either way. I feel like one of us probably at some point said finger pistols.
I know, yeah.
I mean, I guess technically there is probably in the 240 episodes of this podcast we've done, somebody has said finger pistols.
Sure.
Well, what happens if it's a beer and something you've said?
No one will ever know.
No one will ever know. No one will ever know. One, I'm in charge, and two, none of it matters. So
It's true. It's true. I'm going to say real.
Dan is saying that one is real, and finally Steph.
I'm going to say real, and I think I may have actually had this beer.
That could be true because it is, in fact, a real beer. Sorry, Adam, you were wrong on this one. Steph and Dan were correct. Finger Pistols is a Pils and Wheat Malt Saison from New Anthem Beer Project in Wilmington, North Carolina. And that's about all I have to say about it, other than pew pew, because there's not a lot of information on the internet about this beer, but it exists.
Oh, but New Anthem's.
Oh, it's
I
also
like
a beer
this
by
one.
The Answer.
Oh, okay. Okay, that one didn't come up in my Googling.
Wait a minute, you looking up untapped beers during the...
After, I guess.
Okay.
I trust Steph. I trust her
I
to
don't
be honest.
cheat.
I trust
That's
her
why
to
I
be
lose
honest.
all the time.
Well, yeah. It's better to have. It's more important to maintain your integrity. It's way more important to maintain your integrity than to win happy fun time.
Yes.
I would say. So we have come to the final beer of the game. So we're going to add up the scores quick and see where everybody is standing. And we actually have a spread here. Dan, at the top of the heat with a perfect score so far, 3 out of 3
No
points.
pressure, no pressure.
Steph right behind with only 1 point, and with 2 points. And Adam,
Oh, two.
you have 2 points. Adam is at the bottom with only 1 point. So what this means is we're going to make Dan guess first, have Adam guess last, so at least he gets to hear everyone's answers. The best you can hope for at this point is a tie for second place. Final beer of the game. Dan, is it real? Is it fake? It is called Fish Top, Fish Bottom.
Oh, God. Oh, no.
Oh, why?
Ew, please be fake. Please, for the love of God, be something one of us said.
Dan is saying that is fake with lots of emotion. Steph?
I don't know why anyone would name a beer that, but I also realize I'm in second place. So if I even want a chance of tying Dan, I need to say the opposite of what he said.
Strategy.
So I will say the opposite of what he said.
All right, so Steph is saying that is a real
But
beer.
that's gross.
And finally, Adam.
No, I'm going fake.
Going with fake. Steph has successfully tied because it is, in fact, a real beer. Now, I got a lot of notes on this one, so buckle in. Fish
Okay.
Top, Fish
Story
Bottom.
time, kids.
Yeah, actually, it's not that much, but it's more than the rest. Is a, here we go, malted milk ball coffee toffee imperial milk stout.
Nope. Okay. No.
A lot of words there. From Modest Brewing in collaboration with Hayes Public House from Minneapolis and Buffalo, Minnesota, respectively. It's a big old 13% ABV and was conditioned on malted milk balls, espresso coffee, toffee bits, and cocoa nibs. As for the name, they say on their website, there are many existential questions that plague the insomniacs, intrigue some of the greatest philosophers of our time, and foster the most lively debates. Further clarifying, sort of, in an FAQ style, with the question, I'm sorry, I'm a little confused as to what the debate is, to which they answer, first off, that's not a question, but the answer is simple. Fish top or fish bottom. I feel like I know less than I did when I started reading that.
I would agree.
So we kind of know how it all shook out. If you've been paying attention, we have not quite a German sparkle party, but we do have 2 people tied for first place with 3 points apiece. Those are my fellow beer busters, Dan and Steph. Congratulations to you. Still with only 1 single point, it's better than nothing, is our guest Adam, fortunately, there is no punishment for losing. There is no prize for victory other than bragging rights, but thank you all for playing. If you're watching this on the internet, do the things that the internet wants you to do, but this is the part of the podcast where we shout out to our most generous patrons on Patreon. We would like to thank the following individuals very sincerely. Jen McDonald.
Peanut.
PA Brew Review.
Slimy peeps.
Eric Dixon.
Spill the beer.
Dana.
Don't forget the F.
Don't forget it. James Lamberg.
Putting it in a can is sexy.
Chris Mahoney.
It's got a hair of Dutch.
Sean Sullivan.
Gonna go back in time.
Brian Mills.
Let's talk about cheese.
Baby. Jill Chivers. The one and only that is No Baloney, Joe Mansell.
Salty pretzels.
Topher Simmons.
Filled with yummy goodness.
And finally, Ben Mengel.
Oh, that was the wrong knob.
If you want to find out how you can get your name on this list and get other cool behind-the-scenes perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling of supporting the podcast, that was a plural word that I forgot halfway through that it was plural, go to patreon.com/beerbusters to find out how to become a patron of the podcast. And now listen to some commercials.
Say, Yvonne, remember when I said I'd have to send away to NASA to calculate your bar tab?
Oh, yeah. We all had a good laugh, Mo.
The results came back today. You owe me $70 billion.
If there's two things in life that go well together, we certainly know music and beer pair well. That's why I want to thank Vinyl Me Please for helping to sponsor today's episode of Beer Busters. Vinyl Me Please is a Record of the Month club. It's the best damn record club you're going to find. Every month, Vinyl Me Please features one album that is essential to the modern vinyl collection and sends it to thousands of members worldwide. Each record is pressed exclusively for VMP members with features you can't get anywhere else, like bonus tracks, special inserts, colored variants, album-inspired art, and so much more, and a cocktail recipe. And when they say special edition, they are not messing around. They work closely with both the label and the artist to come up with something that you actually can't find anywhere else. Case in point, my marble edition of Weezer's Pinkerton that I got from them last year. They've got a flexible membership that is easy and works for you. There's no contract, no strings, no guilt trips. You can cancel anytime, no hidden fees, and it's top-shelf customer service to make sure you get the answers and help you need as soon as humanly possible. If you want to join Vinyl Me Please, you can head over to joinvmp.com/beerbusters. Again, that is joinvmp.com/beerbusters to get your vinyl on.
Do you guys have any pressing quick questions that you need a quick answer to before we peace out here?
I have a question. So
Okay.
back to the whole blending of it all. I love that you have you can blend in the tap, you can blend like everywhere. But, and I may have missed this earlier dealing with some audio stuff, apologies. What's like your go-to blend? What do you drink if you're going to blend something?
That's a really good question. Probably because I'm drinking a lot of lighter beers like Cream Ale and Public and stuff. So if I want something that's a little bit more robust in flavor, but I don't want 12% alcohol, then I probably would take the wheat wine or the barley wine, or a big stout and blend it with something lighter to keep the flavors still there, but drop it to like 7 or 8% instead of. So I did the wheat wine with Cream Ale recently. Wheat wine's 10%, Cream Ale's just under 5. So that brings it up to about 7.2. Yeah, that's what I've been doing recently. As far as blending at the taps.
Yeah. Because you can do that on the fly.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there any kind of blend that you've done that really surprised you? You just figured like, hey, this, would be interesting to try, and then holy crap, it was awesome?
I think when we did the milk stout with the root beer.
Okay, yeah. That did sound really good.
Yeah, it does
because the head actually was two-tone colored. It was like brown and white swirl.
That's cool.
And then you get more, again, it tasted more like a mug root beer. With the milk stout, so that I'd say that one's still memorable, and that was almost a year ago.
Nice.
So
very cool.
I do love me some root beer, so that sounds perfect.
Yeah, root beer is pretty awesome.
Oh, there's the aforementioned pizza.
We can see pizza coming in the background. Rich is delivering pizza. Is he wearing a Whalers hat? Is the question. He is wearing a Whalers hat.
Thumbs up for the Whalers hat.
Sorry, I muted us so you couldn't hear him barreling up the steps. He is wearing the Whalers hat.
Perfect.
What a way to bookend
exactly.
the proceedings. We
exactly.
Start with Whalers, end with Whalers.
So if people want to find more about Cartel, where should they go?
We hang out on social primarily just through Instagram and Facebook. You can go to cartelbrewing.com as far as the interwebs, or you can come to 928 North Prince Street in Lancaster, PA.
And they have a pizza truck there on Mondays.
Yep, we have pizza tent every Monday, and then hot box barbecues here Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and we don't really have anything set in stone for Sundays yet, but we are open every day except Tuesday and Wednesday, and you can find all of our hours accurately posted on Google Maps.
Oh.
Or Google My Business, or whatever they call it these days.
Do you actually keep up with that? Because some businesses know.
I do my best. My background's in digital marketing and brand development and all that stuff.
So you're paying attention.
I try. It's funny because now that I'm my own client, I feel like I slack more than I did for my previous clients.
Of course.
I'm trying to find time for it amongst wearing 17 other hats. So it's really fun. It's not perfect, but it's a work in progress.
I will say, as evidence to your marketing background, I appreciate the fact that on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, if I'm correct, they are all just Cartel Brewing, and the site is cartelbrewing.com.
I try to keep it consistent. Mm-hmm.
I appreciate it when they're all the same, because it's kind of weird when like some breweries are like something Brew Co. on Twitter, but Brewing Company on Instagram, and like Beer Company on Facebook, and it's like, well, which one is it?
Or how some podcasts
I did think of something. Do we have time?
Sure. Go for it.
Yeah.
So most people ask this question, and we didn't really get to it. So there's a lot of people ask, and I'm sure this will answer a lot of people that ask where the name came from.
God damn it! I did want to ask that.
I got you covered, buddy.
Thank you.
He's so upset with himself.
So in my diggings through the actual origins of the word cartel, the original definitions that I've found were pretty much summed up by a group of independent manufacturers and suppliers aligned by a common interest, which to me seemed very vague, and it could apply to beer just as much as drug trafficking. And so I thought it's a little edgy, but why don't we try to redefine the word, or at least not let some negative drug trafficking people have the claim to a word and have like control over a word. So we're trying to redefine that for something a little more fun, a little more positive. And eventually we want to get into charity work, or, not charity work, but find some charities to support and do some fun projects to support. And then most likely there'll be anti-trafficking related, whether it's drug trafficking or human trafficking or anything like that. So we have fun with the word, but it's not all about, drug references. We do have some fun with our names, and, so that's where that came from. The short version of the story. So I know a lot of people ask, so it's always cool to bring that up because it's a question we get a lot.
Yeah, I wanted to ask mostly because I'm rewatching Better Call Saul to get ready for the new season.
I got to watch it tonight.
Yeah, I still have to finish 2 episodes from last season before I can get it. I mean, I've seen it before, but it's just I want to be as fresh in my mind as I can. But, there's, friend of the cartel, and that was in my brain. I'm like, well, I got to ask where the name came from. So thank you for remembering to say it, because I forgot to ask.
No problem.
We make a good team.
I think we've covered everything now.
Yes.
Probably not, but
yeah, I mean,
it's a good first run.
We got to have you back on then.
We'll just have to do another episode with you.
Yeah, perhaps in person.
The next one has to be in person so we can drink some barley wine.
Yes, and then we can do all sorts of blending and
some freeze-dried coffee.
Yes.
There you go.
Freeze-dried everything.
I didn't even think about that. So, the hands-on experience this podcast episode could be.
Maybe I'll try to freeze dry some beer before then.
Ooh. That would be cool. I really we should make a video of the freeze-drying beer process. Like
Could you imagine a day, Steph, where you hop on an airplane, you get settled into your seat, you pull down that tray, and they come down to give you a drink, and all you ask for is a can of seltzer. And in your purse, you have a 6 gram
or my fanny pack.
And your fanny pack, because they're coming back. And you have a little 6 gram packet of Pilsner. And you just throw it.
Right?
You just rehydrate.
We have freeze-dried pizza.
Oh yeah, that's how the astronauts eat it.
There was
you would never have to drink bad beer or eat bad food ever again.
There's freeze-dried pizza in Back to the Future too. They rehydrate it. And it gets real big, and then
the Pizza Hut stuff.
Yeah.
What year was that?
You must try the hot spit. 2015, the far distant future of 2015.
Damn it!
I think we failed.
Yeah, we didn't get there. We don't have hoverboards.
Yeah, and our fashion never caught up to the movie.
Yeah, and there's only so many Jaws movies. So
that's true. There's still time though. Spielberg's still going.
Still time.
He's just busy remaking West Side Story.
Well,
while you're out there looking at Cartel online or, in person, don't forget to do that too. Remember, you can follow along with our stuff, our shenanigans on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. We are at Beerbusters. Facebook, we are Beerbusters Podcast. There's beerbusterspodcast.com where you can add /shop and get some cool merch. There's YouTube where we're Beerbusters Podcast. And there's Patreon where we are Beerbusters. Now, we weren't fortunate enough to be able to have the same branding along the way. But, fairly easy to find on the interwebs.
Yeah, I mean, just Google Beerbusters. We got thrown off by the fact that there is another entity out there in the ether called Beerbusters, but they're not a podcast. So some things were Beerbusters podcast, some things were just Beerbusters.
Yeah.
But you know what?
We make it work.
We're way more prevalent on the internet than they are. So if you Google Beerbusters, we'll be at least the
you're
first
gonna
2
find
pages
us, and that's the important thing. Our business hours are also.
No, they're not. Yeah, we don't have business hours.
Here's another question that I would like to pose, and I think now's the perfect time to pose this because the only opinions that matter are people that have made it this far in the episode. We're less than a year away from our 10-year anniversary doing this podcast.
Yeah, I didn't like it when Wayne said it, and I don't like it now.
Should we do something to celebrate?
Probably.
I'm not asking you. I'm asking the people that have been listening this long.
I feel like I'm speaking for most of them. Hi, Joe, man.
And James.
Let us know.
And Brian.
Let us know your ideas.
Brian's at the end. Yeah, but that is
because it took me 8 months to plan the 100th episode, and I feel like it'll probably take a year to plan a 10-year anniversary.
Which we have
years later. I still have to say you did a hell of a job putting that together.
Yeah, our 100th episode was great.
Yeah, I'm not doing anything like that again, so don't say that.
Fair enough.
Okay,
fair enough. Well, there you go. That's your homework assignment, listeners. 1, go to Cartel Brewing. 2, come up with ideas for our 1-year podcast anniversary, which will be coming
1 year?
Or 10 year. Jesus Christ. Which will be coming up in just about a year, just under a year from now.
Give or take, yeah. It would be
April-ish.
Yeah,
March, April-ish.
This week, next year, as of record. Anyway.
Yeah. All right, we started our podcast around the same time of year as the pandemic.
I mean, a little.
Just like, 8 years before or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
we're way off the rails now.
I believe
anyway,
so.
Let's end this.
Yes, exactly. But Adam, thank you for joining us, man. This has been great.
Thank you for your patience. I'm sorry it was late.
It happens.
It happens.
You're
a
doing
busy
important
man.
things. You're doing.
It happens. I'm not the only one that's ever done that to you guys.
I mean, I'm known for being
in 10 years.
Yeah, surprisingly not.
No,
yeah.
Every guest is super fucking punctual.
Yeah.
No, you may have been late, but the only ones that have been shunned are the ones that cancel.
Mm.
It has only happened.
To be fair, we gave one person credit for canceling recently where we didn't shun them. And that's understandable. They had a business to run.
We have had cancellations for good reasons.
Yeah, but we've also had
I
cancellations
forgot
for
about
bad
that one.
reasons.
I was thinking about early
I know which one you're thinking of. Which ones you're thinking of, probably.
Oh, boy.
But anyway, all that to say, this does unfortunately bring us to the end of another episode of Beer Busters. This has been awesome, and I can't wait to get out there to Cartel and try some cool blends, and I want to try that root beer thing. Root beer is my favorite soda, and I don't drink much soda, so I feel like I would let myself drink that.
You guys do need to come up, and we need to do a Lancaster County Beer Day. There's a lot of stuff up here since you've probably consumed beer in Lancaster County.
Yes,
it's been a while.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I also want to say, you listening to this, thank you for following along. If you have made it this far, if you are joining us for this episode for the first time, or you've been along for the whole ride, thank you. Don't forget to leave a rating and review for us and all your podcasts. But I'm Dan Baker, joined by my co-host and brewologist,
You did just drink a poor man's last episode, so my comment is a mute point.
And the demented and fermented.
We just drove right over the post, and we're just still
I know,
going.
I did that on purpose, and that was a joke for some of our patrons.
My name's Wayne Baker. Thanks for listening.
No squids were
Bye.
harmed.
Okay, bye. Can we freeze dry the podcast?